And joining us now live from Washington, D.C. is a communications specialist who served under President George W. Bush, Christopher HARVIN. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Precious. Thanks for having me again.
Let me ask you your thoughts on Finland and Sweden's application to join NATO, especially because it is not known if these countries are under immediate threat. One would have thought that a country like Moldova that is under immediate threat, or people think that is under immediate threat, would be applying to join NATO. But what's your thoughts?
You know, NATO is a defense organization, and NATO's main purpose is a deterrence against Russia. Or any aggression on the continent of Europe. And, you know, it's well within the right of Sweden and Finland to ask to join. Traditionally, they've not. They've been neutral countries. But Finland and Sweden applying to NATO and potential acceptance into NATO only strengthens the Baltics and the northern areas of Europe.
And Russia has threatened retaliations over these NATO applications. Thus, these applications then make Finland and Sweden even more vulnerable to attacks.
They could invite attacks, but Russia's military is weakened. We've seen the problems they've had on the battlefield in Ukraine. They continue to have problems in Ukraine. I would think that any kind of threat to Sweden or Finland would be much similar that you see in the UK and other areas where Russians fly their jets into, incursions into within the country, cyber attacks, and potential Russian hybrid aggression like they do in other countries.
Finland particularly shares about 800-mile border with Russia. I'm not sure this was what Russia was thinking about or thinking of when it started this war. Russia was actually looking for security guarantees, but now it looks like it is going to be flanked by more NATO members. What's your thought on this in terms of how Russia is likely to react?
Well, like we just mentioned, Russia is likely to react with cyber attacks. They're likely to use some form of energy suppression, whether it's limiting the power grid or Russian energy exports for oil. I think they're likely to expand potentially with maybe some sort of economics push. Maybe their tariffs or increase, but Russia has a problem. They have a problem internally, both politically and I think with their people in the long run, particularly as they're suppressing their aggression in Ukraine. And I think they have a problem on the battlefield militarily, that their weapons are not up to par. They have problems because they've been on the shelf so long, basically.
And when you also look at the fact that Russia is fighting a war in Ukraine, there is also an economic battle because of all the sanctions that Russia has had to deal with. And then Finland and Sweden might likely be a part of NATO. How weak do you expect Russia to become in the coming years, maybe?
That's yet to depend. It depends on what the Russian exports of energy will actually be, how other countries such as China will address their needs, and how long this war drags on. I think there's a lot of unknowns right now for the future for Russia. And continuing as they're backed in the corner, Putin will display further aggression and anger.
But
it's a very difficult time right now.
All right, so let's talk about the possibility of Finland and Sweden actually joining NATO, because we understand that Turkey is likely to use its veto power to block the move. What procedures does Finland and Sweden still have to go through, and how do they go around the veto by Turkey?
That's correct. So currently, Sweden and Finland are both working to ratify within their parliaments their interest in joining NATO. They've both expressed extensive interest, and everyone expects that Sweden and Finland will ascend their application to NATO. Once those applications go in NATO, the 30 countries have to ratify by Congress or Parliament their acceptance or their denial of Finland and Sweden within NATO. Yes, you're correct. Turkey has voiced some objection to their ascension into NATO. However, Even today, some of the Turkish diplomats and the foreign ministers signaled that there were conditions that they were interested in them joining, and particularly around some of the terrorist groups that Turkey claims are operating within their borders.
I will see how it plays out and what this the overall implication of this for Russia. Thank you so much for talking to us. Communications specialist who served under President George W. Bush, Christopher HARVIN.
Thank you very much.